Welcome back, mamas. Today we have a episode that is very close to my heart. Someone who I love dearly is my neighbor, Michelle Witt. We've always been friendly neighbors and, have talked to each other out in the yard. And there's been moments where we just bonded more and more, over the years. And then last year, I went through a really hard season. I had lost a really close friend, our other neighbor, who is Lydia's mother, the little girl that I babysit. And the next month, my dog passed away. And then the next month, my close family friend passed away. And it was just a really hard season. And you were someone that just was there and reached out. And I was just in awe because I was she lost her daughter, and I almost felt silly being upset, but there was a time where I just came over and we cried together and we talked, and but she was just so sweet in those moments, and just someone that I think on the outside I looked like everything was fine, but it was just a hard season, and I don't think that a lot of people realize that, and you just were there a lot and sending me stuff right when I needed it, so it was just such a God thing. And so with that, I will just let you introduce yourself. Tell us how you met Greg. She does have a husband, and just kind of give us a little bit of backstory.
Maybe where you grew up. Anything
yes.
from here until now.
Well, I'm Michelle. I grew up in Wentzville, and I met my husband Greg at Panteras. He was my boss.
I jump ahead and assume that on your anniversaries you guys go get pizza.
We do not. We ate too much when we were there, but I thought he was handsome, and I had gone up there with my mama, and I looked at his hands, and I'm like, he's a strong man, and I told my mom I was going to marry him.
And I know, and you know what's funny is that I always tell Jonathan, I was I really think you have really cute hands, and he's that's so weird.
That too. It's start a new trend. Let's just go out with it.
But does he have cute hands?
Yeah, Eric does. Yeah. Oh no, that's yours.
It was it was more his arms, the strength in his arms, and however, he had a girlfriend, so I dated his brother for a little bit.
Well,
and it worked. It made him jealous.
Is Thanksgiving awkward now?
No. They do tease that my son Cody looks like Jeff, as a joke. But no, it's definitely.
You guys have fun together.
Yes, he's definitely a great
son.
son.
How long did you date his brother for? Was it
not
a very
long.
short?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So it was not very serious.
No,
Gotcha.
not at all.
Funny.
So, but it is a family topic sometimes. But 34 and a half years later, we're still together.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He grew up in St. Charles, and once we got married, that's where we moved and lived there for a while. And I had Cody there. And then a year or so later, we transferred to Kentucky, Cincinnati area. And that's where Kate was born. We called her our little hillbilly. Her name's actually Catherine Louise. I thought about Katie Lou, and she told me that if I would have done that to her, she would have hated me forever. So,
how did she get that nickname?
Katie Lou?
Little hillbilly.
Oh, that because Kentucky,
Okay.
hillbillies, that's the thing.
Okay.
But that didn't really stick. But technically her nickname was Katie Baby from everybody. So we were married 34 and a half years. We had Cody. He is currently 33. And then we had Katie, who is forever 27. She was a very good daughter. She had a beauty inside and out. Initially, she was very outgoing, but as the disease took over, she became more introverted. And
Are you willing to share about what happened, like how old she was and what disease occurred?
Yeah. I guess in 2007, right after her birthday, she turned 14 in March 7th, and she was running track at school, and, she'd come home, gosh, Mom, I'm so thirsty, I'm tired, I'm peeing a lot. And I'm like, well, you're running track, you're, drinking more water, you're going to pee, no, something's wrong with me. And I'm like, whatever, just kind of blew her off, and one day she come running out of her room, "This is what's wrong with me." And I'm like, "Oh, good Lord," and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "I am a diabetic." And I said, "No, you're fine. It's what I said, the track and the water." And she wouldn't let it go. So finally I'm like, okay, I'm tired of hearing about it. So I said, I made you an appointment Friday. We're going to go. I'm going to tell you I told you so, and we'll be done with it, Well, Friday we went, and they tested her sugar, and she was a diabetic.
Wow.
So they immediately sent us to...
Type 1, correct?
Type 1, yes, which means you're insulin dependent.
Yeah.
And so we ended up driving down. They let us drive. We didn't have to take an ambulance because she was only in like the 300 sugar levels. So it's high, but not critical at this point. So we went to the hospital, and they got her sugars down. They had doctors come in and, work with her, and nurses rather, on how to give herself shots, and, a dietitian on what we should eat and how to count carbs. And, it was just a total different world,
Oh, I can imagine.
And
we've had a mother do a whole
we did
podcast just on that, because that is
Type
like
1.
something that people hear, oh, your daughter has cancer. Oh my gosh. But for type 1 children and mothers, that's a whole nother
Right. And
just trial.
What's hard is diabetes is so tough on your body, head to toe. Every organ, your nerves, your eyes, your stomach, it affects everything. And Kate would have an issue because she would try, and the sugars would still be high, and then she would get frustrated. She's like, "What am I supposed to do? No matter what I do, it's never right," because different things affected it, whether you were exercising, how much you ate. If you ate a carb today, like pasta, it could still make your sugar levels high 2 days later. So, so it was very hard for her. And so we went home. She went to school. Life kind of continued on. She came and asked me one day if she could start managing her own diabetes. And I'm like, well, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
I said, but I'll work with you.
Right.
And so we,
She has to learn at some point, right? Like,
yeah.
get her, help her to
Help
do
herself,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, as long as your sugar levels are staying in a good range, I said, I'll let you take control. And so she'd bring me her meter, and they'd be like 117, 121, and I'm like, you're doing awesome.
Yeah.
But every time we're turning around, we're in the hospital or the doctor's office. She had thrush. She had hives from head to toe. Her body was just, out of whack. And she was honeymooning still, which means that your pancreas is still producing insulin, just not enough. And I am sure the lady from the previous said. And
what time frame is that typically? Didn't they?
I think 6 months.
Was it 6 months? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies, but I could be wrong because it's been so long. So I'm, we're in the hospital, we're in the emergency room, we're at the doctor's office, just nonstop. And so in January, which would be 2008, I went with her always, because she was a minor, to her endocrinologist. And she's like, let me see her meter. I want to see what her ranges have been. And so I opened the case, and this little bottle of drops fell out. And she picked them up, and she handed them to me, and she said, don't ever let her have those. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, she's using those drops to get a fake reading on her meter. And I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah. She said, the drops are basically to calibrate your meter to make sure it's reading right. And so she was not following the plan like she was supposed to. All she would do was...
Did she know this? Was
Yeah,
she
like how did she figure that out?
Yeah.
I don't really know, other than she did, And
was she strong-willed?
Yes.
Yeah.
But what had kind of happened was in her, and this is, we found this out through therapy and talking and stuff. she realized that, hey, before I was a diabetic, I was losing weight. If I don't take my insulin, I'm going to lose weight.
She's at that age.
Yeah, which
Mm-hmm.
is crazy though, because usually type 1 diabetic, don't they have a hard time gaining weight? Isn't
No,
that-
actually, the insulin does make you,
Gain weight.
a lot of
Okay.
women or kids gain weight. And so while I was at the doctor's, I'm like, why didn't you tell me? And she goes, well, we don't usually say anything because we don't want the child to figure it out. And I'm like, but she did. I said,
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Right.
You know, I said, I could have been able to look for signs or something,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And what she was doing was, after I would go to bed, she would take the car at 14 and drive up to Troy and get binge food and soda, you know, sugared soda, not diet soda, to counteract the insulin that I gave her.
Wow.
And so it's called diabulimia. It's the restricting of insulin to lose weight.
Gotcha.
And so they don't want diabetics to learn about that because it could kill them, you know, pretty quickly.
But I mean, that knowledge should be out there, and that's one thing Deli was saying is like the knowledge out there is so limited. It gets so interchanged and crossed between 2 and 1, which they shouldn't even be categorized as the same thing. And that was something she's found too.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that you should know all the facts. How would
Right.
you have ever?
I
caught
wouldn't
this?
have.
Yeah.
And she figured it out right away.
Yeah.
And they actually were on, it's okay that I share this. Okay, were you going to?
Yeah, but
Oh, okay. She was on Dr. Phil with another girl.
named Wanda.
Yes. Because to help bring, you know,
Awareness.
talking about it and awareness.
And
yeah.
and to try to get help
Yeah,
because it
try
For
was
the
hard.
diabetes
Yeah.
or for the
eating disorder,
Yes.
both,
Both,
Yeah.
you know,
yeah.
because they're
It's a
interchanged.
whole level dynamic. whole
Right.
new
And
dynamic.
it was so new that
so
nobody
spreading
had,
awareness about
right,
it.
you know, and so
How did she react, I guess, when you found out that was a thing and that it was discovered that she was doing it? How did you and her, like, what were those conversations?
well, at the doctor's office, she denied doing it. And the doctor was like, Kate, there is no way your readings can be this good. And then for you to be in the hospital and be as sick as you are all the time, you know? And she's like, okay, yeah, I was doing it, you know? Like no big deal, you know? And so it was hard discussing it because she took everything as being critical. Not that I was trying to help her, you know? And she pushed away. She pushed against it a lot. We got to the point where I was locking up doors, you know, the pantry and hiding the keys, you know, so that she couldn't sneak out. But it was like she always found a way, whether it was sneaking out the front window, you know, of her room, you know, and friends picking her up or whatever, you know. It was so above my head, you know. We hooked up with a team, which was very helpful. Her name was Dr. Sarah Tycast, and I don't remember what her specialty was, but she was like the go-between and help communicate between your pediatrician and the her regular doctor. I'm sorry, her endocrinologist. And so when things would go bad, they would all meet together and get a plan and keep her on the same page. And she was very critical in getting us, Kate, into an eating disorder facility. Again, it was hard because nobody understood the complexity. You know, they both affect your brain. You know, the eating disorder, you know, because your sugars and, you know, everything are all out of whack, and the depression and the anxiety, and it was very hard to control. I don't know, she went downhill, you know, and she let that disease become her ID, you know. And I kept telling her, Kate, you are not diabetes. You are not an eating disorder. But it became her. And she got into a hole and just really could never get out of it. There were days and sometimes months where she would do really well. But then there were times where, you know, you couldn't get her out of bed. And so we, excuse me, we got her into McCollum Place. Come to find out, it was by accident. The insurance did something wrong, so we got 30 days. So but they told us never again. So we went to Laureate, which was in Oklahoma, for 30 days. We were in Vida, which is in Kansas. And the only reason we were able to get her there is it was actually inside of a hospital. And so they could work with her, on that aspect. And so the insurance liked that. And so, but they went out.
Topic, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so she was there on Christmas. And it was hard because I had my son, and I actually apologized to him, I don't know how many years ago, because I'm like, I was so focused on Kate and my husband, and that's another story.
Another
that,
podcast.
That I neglected him, and,
Well, you didn't purposefully.
No,
I
no.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
But I just, reading my journal, it was all about Kate, Greg, and
the mom and the wife, they go to the one that needs them the most. It was on a This Is Us movie or series,
Oh my gosh,
and the mom said that, and
show.
I was like, that is the best way to put it. But it still, you don't want to neglect the kid. That seems okay, right?
Right.
But it's natural. Like with Sadie, Sadie has gotten all the attention. Now I've decided to homeschool the boys, and I have way less time with her, and I'm feeling guilty. Then I'm saying no, like the boys are going to be out of the house first, spend more time, So it is a conflict, and I feel like I lost 2 to 3 years with the boys.
Right. Yeah, there was a big span of time. I couldn't tell you what Cody was doing,
But he knows that now that he's adult too. Like you go to the one. I mean,
yeah,
I think it's what we're meant to do.
He was
in a
very
way.
understanding,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
to be honest, when Kate passed, he was my rock because my husband couldn't be.
Sure.
Because in grief, and Sam, we talked earlier about it, everybody grieves differently. What I feel and do is totally different than somebody else, and you can't make them grieve the way you want them to grieve. They've got to do it their way.
And what helps you might not help your husband.
Right.
And letting go of that.
Right. And so it is very tough. I don't know. It was very hard, and with Cody not being at home, I wanted just to be hugged, and I wasn't getting that from Greg. And Greg turned to what he always turned to, which was his alcohol. And I didn't know if we were going to make it, but I had to understand from people telling me the same thing. You just grieve differently. So I had to give him that,
Sure.
That I know of. He's never cried, and I think guys just hold it in and they, process it different. And, he turned to what he knew, and it wasn't me, And
Have you ever seen him cry in your whole marriage?
Maybe about twice.
Wow. What was it a death-related topic or just?
I don't remember the one time we were out on our deck. It's been so long ago, and he was crying then. And then I think the other one was when his grandmother had passed away, but
Wow.
he and people are, how can you not cry,
Yeah.
And
Would he ever admit to you if he has? Have you ever asked him?
I've mentioned it,
Yeah.
just saying I don't think he's cried, and he just doesn't say.
anything.
So I
Yeah.
learned a few years after Sadie's situation that my husband cries all the time when he's alone. And I think even still to this day, Samantha witnessed it. We talked about it before the podcast. We were bringing up an old story. I have been able to share it. I've been able to almost get counsel just by sharing the testimony so many times that it doesn't sting as much anymore. Of course it does, but it doesn't. And then he just had to walk away. And he called me one day. We were doing a cleaning job, and he's like, I think he works in construction in downtown St. Louis, and he had to bring some kind of material to Children's Hospital. And he's like, you think that I'm just, glazing over. I don't actually feel, the feelings and all these things. And he basically said like, he couldn't even like hardly do that job that day to, be reminded of the memories. So it broke my heart because I saw him in exam, like, Wall said he was back in really big exams. Like it's either like they could come out of the room and say like, we're going to take her eye out. Like it was that critical, or worse, could have been worse than that. And he's sitting there on his phone watching baseball. So anyways, it's just all that to say, I think had no idea. Mm-hmm. He had to go away from it. I had to go into it, and it's okay,
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people ask me, why are you still married? And I'm like, well, one, I love him. Mm-hmm. Two, I know how he can be and how he is when he's not drinking. Mm-hmm. The drinking is better. I don't think he'll ever not drink, but it is better. And I guess that's a choice that I've made. It caused a lot of conflict with him and Kate. He would trigger her. It caused family problems. But again, that's a different story. Sure. But I could go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. And maybe do you think too, like once you've gone through something so life-changing, hard, it's almost like even though you grieve in different ways, it's almost like you kind of two are the only ones that will ever understand each other. He's the father of your children, and even though
it's your family unit.
Right.
Yeah.
And nobody's perfect.
Right.
I definitely am not. I have lots of flaws, and
but I'll say from what I've seen of Greg, like he is very quiet. And that one time we were on the deck, he left and he maybe said like 2 sentences. You're like, wow, he talked a lot.
Yes.
Like, oh, yeah. Well, that's good.
Well, he was always introverted, but after Kate passed,
he got more.
It's worse.
He was talking more. But I mean, there's actually been times like when we were remodeling the kitchen and stuff, like he came over and actually we've talked quite a bit. Him and Jonathan have talked and stuff.
Just once he warms up.
Yeah,
too.
like
but not always, not as much anymore. So
Yeah.
I mean, we can go somewhere and, like even at the holidays with his family, and he just sits by himself, so.
Do you want to go back to, you were down in the hospital in Oklahoma, were you saying?
Laureate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from that point on, was that a good experience down there? And how old was she when she was in there?
This was all between the ages of 13. No, I'm sorry, because she was diagnosed at 14 and 16. Okay. Pretty much after that, then the insurance kind of was hard to find, and Vita, the one in Kansas, closed down, and that's the one I could get in more easily, because every time you went, it was a constant battle with the insurance. She doesn't need to be there, We're going to send her home the next day. We did find a facility up in Minnesota called, I don't remember, but
all over the country. You're talking. You're fighting to get her help.
Yes, Park Nicollet is what it was called, and they specifically dealt with diabetics and eating disorders. And she was there 2 weeks, and the insurance kicked her out. And so it was very frustrating because, here's the insurance telling my child what she needs. They recommended IOP, which is intensive outpatient, which is usually several months long. It's from usually about 8 to 5 every day. But with her, okay, fine, you're monitoring her while she's there, but as soon as she leaves,
Right.
Yeah, you gave her insulin, but she's stopping at the store and picking up McDonald's or, a liter of Coke or something and downing it, and I think they all tried the best they can. Besides the eating disorders or eating disorder facilities, we did do IOP, the intensive outpatient. They're usually, a 2 to 4 month program, Monday through Friday, like 8 to 5. But it allows that person to go home and so continue whatever behaviors they were doing beforehand. But the insurance just didn't think that she needed to be in a long-term facility. I think it was the first time she was in an IOP. We started in July, and she went until November 11th, I believe, 10th or the 11th. And she graduated, that she completed their program, and then the next day we were airlifted to Children's Hospital because her blood sugar was over 1,200.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and this was a common thing for her. Her sugar levels were always above 500. Her A1C, the most I had seen it, or the highest, was 17. It's supposed to be below a 7. Well, back then it was a 7. Now they've lowered it. I think it's now more like a 5.5, 6. Wow. They like you to be at. Yeah. But I did learn that I don't know what the percentages are, but I was told that when a teen between the ages of 10 and 16 are diagnosed with diabetes, that they are very likely to develop an eating disorder. I don't remember the rate.
So I looked it up, and they're 3 times more likely if a teen is diabetic. It's 3 times more likely to have an eating disorder. 33% of the males that are diagnosed as teens will develop an eating disorder, and 40 to 45% of teens in general that are diagnosed as a teen with diabetes will have an eating disorder. So it's almost half. That is like mind-blowing.
Right. And
especially on the male end, because that is such a low thing. So it just goes to show how severe it is.
Yeah. And how much it's not a decision they're making.
Right.
It's a chemical change. There's stuff going on inside of them that they have no control over.
Right. And Kate would get frustrated at school because the kids would be like, well, just, eat, exercise, you'll be fine. And she'd come home, she's like, I am not type 2, I am type 1. Right. It doesn't matter what I do. I am going to, have to take insulin,
and that's just so hard for teen girls in general.
Yes. She wanted to fit in.
I struggled with the same struggles she was struggling with.
She wanted to fit in. She wanted to be liked,
As a teen, you can't reconcile as much as when you're an adult, and you can't reconcile, like, why did this happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
Why do all the kids get to do what they want, eat what they want, and here I am doing this? And that is hard.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be torture. Years.
Yes, and it was really hard on her.
Can you give a glimpse into your life, so the perspective from a mom, what it's like? Because did you ever have a good night of sleep ever again at that point? I mean,
no.
Can you?
It was tough. I love my husband, but I was the one dealing with everything.
Yeah.
I took her to every doctor's appointment. I slept in the hospital with her, every night, while she was there for a week at a time or 3 or 4 days at a time.
And you didn't have the equipment where it sends a message to your phone, correct?
No, that was before our time. So things may be a little bit easier now. Toward the end, they had come out with that Dexcom where it will read your sugar levels. But I guess it was because it was kind of new yet. Yeah. She had a lot of problems with it, and so she gave up on it. But I had my finger pricked the other day at work because we had a fair, a health fair. And my finger hurt for 2 days, and this poor girl had to do it multiple times a day, and then, the eating disorder just took over. We call them ED quite a bit. And, as a parent, you're helpless. I would pray, God, please let somebody come into her life that will make a difference, and it never happened. I knew the ramifications of what the disease does to your body and what could happen. And I mean, we teased that she had 9 lives because the very first year, after she was diagnosed, she was in the hospital 17 times. Wow. A typical diabetic goes into DKA maybe a couple times a year, maybe not even that much ever, She was in DKA. I lost count. It was, unbelievably high amount of times. And every time you go, the toxins in your body build up and they affect different organs. And so, I knew in my heart that if we didn't get help, that she would die. And she knew. But the eating disorder won out. You know, it had more control, just eating in her ear, you know, just, Kate, you're fat. Kate, you're ugly. Kate, you're this. Kate, you're that.
And she was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. The eating disorder facilities, individual therapy sessions, psychiatrists, you know, everything. We did it all, you know. But we found out possibly a trigger was that during therapy, we found out that Kate had been molested. And so we had known about her friend, and they had asked to set the time, but Kate had denied it. But Kate's friend, her stepfather had molested her, the stepnephew, who was 2, and 2 other neighbor girls. He got prison time, not very long. I've never told Greg that he got out, because Greg threatened to kill him, you know, and that's, you know, between the loss of that innocence, you know, the loss of that, you know, ability to make your own decisions and run your own life, you know, here you've got to take your insulin, you can't eat until you've done this, and you've got to check this, and I think that started her spiral. With the depression, she ended up over the years, with, she had depression, anxiety, diabetes. She developed from not taking care of herself, gastroparesis, which is a slowing of the intestinal system. She would go weeks without going to the restroom, lots of pain. She had neuropathy.
Plus the eating disorder.
Yes.
Holy cow.
You know, the girl couldn't catch a break. And, that's where it became her. And, I tried to encourage her that, she's more than that, and to fight for herself, and that, they're coming around with, things that are helping diabetics. And if she took care of herself, that maybe there's something they could do. And, she just couldn't do it. And, it's sad, because now, like you said, they have the Dexcom. Now they have the insulin that, it pumps, and, they're making strides. So, maybe there was something. I still don't know if she would have ever recovered the eating disorder, from that. I think, they had told us at McCollum that if someone has an eating disorder, or develops one, if you don't do something about it within the first 6 months, that it's very, very hard and unlikely that they'll ever recover.
And yet they don't tell you anything about it.
Right.
But if it happens, then...
Right. And so by the time we figured it out, it was well past 6 months.
Unbelievable.
And so... my recommendation to mothers out there, whether it's your son or daughter, if they're in their teens and they develop diabetes,
Yeah, we just have a friend that has a teen or preteen, almost teen, that is a girl. And so this could possibly,
help her.
Like, I don't know if it's anything profound, but this might just be something that saves her daughter,
Yeah, just be aware that, I don't know enough anymore since it's been over almost 5 years. I don't know how the meters work, I guess since they're doing this, I guess there are no calibration drops, so maybe they can't manipulate the system like they could, maybe that has helped. But just watch if they're being more secretive, and wanting to take charge, that even though they're wanting to, that they do it in front of you, I mean, I remember running through the house and happened to sit on her to give her insulin, because she didn't want it, because she knew that if she took it, she would gain weight. And it was a constant battle. As she got older, she, would try, and she would do good for a month or two, and then she would tank, and it was that constant up and down.
I do have a question for you, though. If you could go back to yourself and give yourself grace on anything, I imagine me being a mom of a child with cancer, what did I do wrong? What did I do? Like, normal moms have mom guilt just in general. So is there anything that you could go back to your former self and say that another mom out there dealing with the same or similar situation that you could tell them?
Well, during it, I was doing the best I can, and that's all you can do.
Right.
Yeah.
Seek every avenue.
So much.
You were fighting.
Yeah.
Yes, trying to get her help. I'm hoping that something she did or said throughout her life helped somebody.
Just making moms aware of the situation, having no idea that they could hide it.
Right.
Right.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I sure didn't know.
Right.
I was just shocked.
She had to be Googling at school in the library or something. I don't know. Way too much. There ain't no way.
She was, she put it together pretty quick, and I just, be gentle on yourself, do the best you can, get them the help wherever you can get it. Like I said, maybe things are better now for it. I don't know. But it was tough, I feel more guilt at her death, because I think she died in the next room. How did I not know? Why couldn't I have saved her, And it's tough. And it took me a while to eat through that grief, or that guilt, that it was meant to be, and I'm going to talk about that. But, so the guilt as much was over that, because I do know I did as much as I could, So just give yourself some grace, and be there for them if they're going to be willing to talk to you about it. I ended up being Kate's best friend because toward the end, she had no one. She would sit in her room for the last year and maybe go out, to get something to eat or to go to a movie by herself, because people just didn't understand. And
she did ride the 4-wheeler with my brother.
He did post
just
the other day that he was nervous talking to her. So anyways, she she deserves so much more, and I pray that she's in heaven. And that's the only thing sometimes that gets me through, is that I'm going to see her again. But because I was concerned, because I have not always been the best in my faith. I've come a long way. The last year, she was going, actually it was a little bit before that, she had started going to church with me, and we went into McCollum. And we were there for 3 hours, and they kicked us out. And she was so angry. And it's like she pushed God away. She quit going to church with me. But I know that weekend before, she raised her hand and said she believed. And so I have to go.
No.
I have to go on that faith, because if I have to sit there and think about her not being in heaven, it would kill me.
That you've, I can see over the years, just watching that you have pressed into God, even, when you have reasons, and I'm sure it's been an up and down battle, and it's probably like a roller coaster, just like with, anything in life, or but I think that I've seen you draw closer to Him when you could have so easily gone so many different directions, with it, and you could have let the anger overtaken you, or and I'm sure those moments did happen, and that, but as a gradual over the last 5 years, I've seen you overall you've pushed into that,
Well, KC 95 used to be the only station I listened to. I now listen to 99.1, I don't wish this on anybody. It was so hard on her and our family. It was devastating. Some key things I want to say is an eating disorder is not about being skinny. It is about a distortion in your brain. And then on top of it with the diabetes, that both affects the brain. So it was very hard to control. People, even in the eating disorder facilities, Kate would get anxiety going in because she wasn't skinny, she wasn't anorexic, she was bulimic, and then she misused her insulin
So she
to
didn't
get
even fit into that category with other people.
right, and so she felt judged and so that caused her anxiety even going
She
into
didn't find a home wherever she went. She always
Exactly.
felt like she stood out.
Exactly. And I just, people are saying, well, what's an eating disorder? It's that distortion. If you ever go to the circus and you have that circus smear, that's the closest thing I could say is how she perceived herself, that warped, she didn't see herself as thin. She didn't see, that, she just saw something that wasn't her in her brain. And so that's a hard thing to get through. But I'm sure with the right help out there, it can be done. Just in my case, it didn't happen. I wanted to also say that I talked about her anxiety and neuropathy and the gastroparesis. That caused her a lot of issues too. And she would take, multiple baths multiple times a day just to try and let the heat soothe her stomach. She would, toward the end, her kidneys were showing some signs of damage. And for a while she had it, the entire time she had a sleep disorder. And so she would be up for, days at a time, and then she'd crash. And
So she was basically burdened from every angle and physical pain. Right? Emotional distress.
A lot of physical pain, because think about not going to the bathroom for weeks.
I can't imagine.
That's so much.
Not
it's
feeling
really
good
painful.
if your organs are shutting down. You just don't feel good, right? Then you're up. All of those things. I can't imagine.
Sleep.
And and what was hard is she knew what she was doing, and she would sit there and, Mom, I did this to myself, but I can't stop. And it was hard as a parent, watching her go through it. And so it just, I just can't stress that you watch your kids, if they're diabetic. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but just be aware it could happen. And maybe it was just all the timing with everything that happened with us that, affected, the overall. During all these years, she really never showed any signs of till the end, like when we would go in the hospital and her blood sugar was 800, or the couple times it was in the 1200 range, she was still with it. Where normally if you're in DKA, you're out of it.
She was a high functioning.
Yes, and they said it was most likely because she was so young and her body was still good. But as time went on, then her body was starting to give out on her. And I know in August, the year that she passed, 2019, I was at work and she called me and it just sounded so weird. And I'm like, what's going on, Kate? And she's like, oh, I'm going swimming, but she was, slurring and, I'm like, Kate, just pull over. I'll come get you. No, I'll be fine. But so I'm standing at work in the parking lot, just freaking out, because I didn't know, if she would even make it to my work. And she opens her door and she falls out of the car. She can't walk, she's stumbling. And I honestly thought, I would lose her that day. And that was one of the days her sugars were in the 1200s, but she still wasn't most diabetics would be in a coma, and
well, my grandpa, it would make him hallucinate. Literally, he would start fighting people that weren't there. He was yelling at people, seeing stuff and we're like, his blood sugar, so that's crazy that she could operate a vehicle at that.
It was scary. And she had developed so much anger, and prior to 2019, I mean, I'll say starting in late high school through her 20s, she started drinking a lot, and she was angry, and she was just acting out because, I think she was like, what did I do to deserve all this? She came out of that, thank goodness, but she put me through some crazy nights. I mean, twice in 2 different locations. She was out drinking with friends, and the one time was here in Troy somewhere. They went to a party, and the girls started smoking weed, and she don't smoke weed, so she got mad and started walking home on some country road, drunk as could be, Well, cop was coming to bust up the party, almost ran her over, so picked her up. And she played the diabetic card, and so he freaked out and took her to the hospital, and they ended up admitting her because she was in DKA. That happened again down in...
Well, she played the card, or it kind of just worked out in her favor.
Yes, yeah.
That was the one night it worked to her benefit.
Well, it happened twice.
Girl, break.
Another time, she was in St. John, and again, same group of girls. They went partying, drinking at the bar. And mind you, I don't think they were 21 at the time. Maybe they were. But she just, Kate got wasted. And so her friends were like, let's go home. And so she started, they started going home, and the other girls started smoking again. Well, she went crazy. Let me out of the car. They let her out on Highway 70 in St. John.
Oh my God.
As drunk as she was. And so she stumbled across the highway. Thank God she didn't get hit. Went into a QT and just was falling all over the place. So they called the cops. And again, I'm diabetic. And so they took her to the hospital and admitted her. But it took her she was so drunk. It took her 3 hours to remember my phone number because she didn't have her phone.
Oh,
and before they finally called, there was a couple parties I had to go pick her up from because she was drunk and, throwing up. I mean, she just was out of control, because she was so angry and partly at her dad.
And probably being a diabetic doesn't play in your favor for that either. So it's everything.
No, alcohol has sugar.
So it's
so
you might be drunk too, but then your sugars are elevated. So then you're going to a whole that's a lot.
Yeah.
Right. And so she just started toward the end, kind of sticking to herself. She didn't like going to family functions because her nieces who were thinner than her would trigger her,
You said her nieces?
Oh, cousins, sorry. My nieces.
Like, I didn't know you had grandkids.
That's never going to happen, unfortunately. But yeah, she, they would trigger her, and so she just kept backing out of society, basically. And like I said, in 2019, that was our last year with her. She ended up in the hospital that year 23 times.
I love her and you.
Yeah. In August was the day, I said she was so crazy and I really thought I would lose her. However, she kind of did an upswing. I think it scared her, because that was the worst she'd ever been, because she didn't even remember it, and, she had quit drinking. She didn't drink it at all that year. Like I said, she went to the movies by herself, or she stayed in her room, or she'd come out on the couch and cry, just because she hurt so bad. And, your heart would break. And she was lonely, she lost her friends. Any boyfriend she had, she would break up with them and tell them that, you deserve more in life than me. For you to have to deal with me and my issues is too much, and so it was sad, because everybody needs to be loved, more so than by their mama,
Right.
And so I think God was preparing me, though, because throughout the whole time, I knew she was going to die before me. She knew she was going to die before me. She'd ask me sometimes, hey, Mom, when I die, will you get a tattoo of me on you? And I'm like, I don't know about that, babe, but, and just kind of play it light. We always teased about how she had 9 lives because so many times she was in DKA and should have died and didn't, You kind of had that false sense of security that she would always be okay, And so it was tough, when it happened. But preparing up to that day, in September, I was at work and I got flowers and it said, to Mom, just because. She'd never sent me flowers before. Let's see, what else did she do? She made me, sometime in that time frame, a little pegboard thing that said, I have to look at this now, I love you. You truly are remarkable.
How special. I assume you still have that to this day.
I do.
A treasure.
Yeah. We went on a vacation. We hadn't been on vacation in 15 years. Unfortunately, Cody couldn't go with us. We tried, but he had just started in the union and didn't, feel like he could go. And again, we didn't know that, anything was going to happen. This is just all hindsight, So we got a family vacation. She didn't want to go at first because she's like, Mom, I can't even walk across, around the block. She had tried and had to call me to pick her up. She would get so winded. Yeah. And I'm like, well, Kate, we'll get you one of those little electric carts or whatever they are. And she's like, well, everybody's going to be staring at me wondering why. I'm like, Kate, you don't know these people, they don't know what you're going through. I said, go and have fun. Well, what am I going to wear? I'm like, who cares? I'm going to jump back real quick. Another thing that because this is going to play in toward the end. Another thing that she did besides, the drinking and the anxiety and neuropathy and sleep disorder and all that, she liked to spend money. It gave her a high. But it was my money. And
I would like to spend it too then.
Yes.
My mom takes care of me too.
She had memorized my credit card. And I don't know how many times, that she did that, and I'm just like, so I had to lock up my, sleep with my purse at night, but thousands of dollars that she, put on my card. But that will come into play in a little bit. So we did Branson, 15 years, had a fun time. She was whizzing around in her little cart, and I think she really enjoyed herself. But 3 hours within being at Silver Dollar City, this was another thing that happened. Her legs would swell and get hard as rocks. I don't really know what was causing that. And we never were able to find out because time ran out. But, and then on October 12th, somewhere in there, she had called wanting to go to church, but I was out with friends and I'm like, I'll leave, I'll come get you. And she's like, no, so that spark was there. Then on October 25th, the 4 of us went on a family dinner and we went over into, I don't know if it's Grafton where the Finn Inn is at. It's a restaurant that has fish tanks in it, and it's got huge old catfish and stuff like that. It's right on the riverfront. And so, Afton or Grafton, I'm not sure which one anymore, but, over that way. But, so, we got to do, it was like God was, not knowing, but I'm like looking back, it was like, okay, I got this,
Those are really good memories.
Right. So, I think what I'm going to do is, I'm going to pull out her journal and read some of her last things. And then go into the night I found her and kind of start wrapping it up. All right, so I'm going to lead us down to the last couple days of things I wrote in my journal from what I found through either text messages from her or Facebook posts or, different things like that. Just kind of just to help me more than anything, On 10/24, she texted me that, she is in so much pain with her teeth because another diabetic thing is that your teeth tend to go bad, and she wasn't taking care of them like she should. And so she was asking me if I knew anybody that had Tylenol 3 to help with that, plus her stomach was hurting. But you can't give someone with gastroparesis Tylenol 3 would probably be okay, but anything stronger, because it's just going to back up your system more because
The constipation.
yes. And so, so that was, nobody knew or had anything for her. On 10/28 of 19, 2/31, she had told me she'd made a pain management appointment in Baldwin, but they couldn't get her in until 11/25 of 19. On 10/30 of 19, she says, as 10:20, I don't know if it was AM or PM, but she says, my room is so clean. I feel at ease and less anxious. She started thinking about all the stuff we had and how cluttered and tight it is. And she got overwhelmed again. Said opening the hall closet and it's a mess. And, so she liked that organization.
I feel that.
I have clean closets now just because of her. So on 10:30 at 2:43 p.m., she texted me she was exhausted from not sleeping. I had mentioned earlier she had the sleep disorder, and she had been going on a couple days without sleeping. On 10:31, she texted, "Sorry if I go straight home," which was actually Halloween. She'd been at a doctor's appointment, her psychiatrist, and she says, "Sorry, if I go straight to my room, I'm really sad today. I don't know why." 10:31, about 11:46 p.m., she sent me a text saying, "Mama," and then she had 3 pictures attached, and it was of her stomach bloating and how, she almost looked pregnant, and then at 11:51, she asked if I would go pick her up some magnesium citrate, I think it was called, because it helps you go. Diet Sprite, chicken soup, and I didn't hear the text, so I didn't get that till the morning. So on the morning of 11/1, still on 10:31, she had taken 3 baths. She was throwing up. Had an ice pack on. Let's see. At 11:55, so much pain, I want to die. 12:18, I'm dying, with a little crying face. 11:01, 3:58, she texted that she'd thrown up a couple times. That was about 4 o'clock. 11:03 said she feels so sick. Sure, she's got a pounding headache and can barely move without wanting to throw up. And then she had a little crying face again. 11:04, 1:06 p.m. She asked if I felt okay, since apparently Greg came home that day not feeling well, so she thought maybe she had something. And I said, no, I was fine. And her last text was, she said, "I don't know." And that was the last text I ever got from her. I'm sorry, I left out. I asked her, are your ketones okay? Maybe it's something that you ate. And then she said, I don't know. So that was my last text on 11/4 at 5:15. And some of these are out of order. On November 4th at 12:25 a.m., she posted and tagged tagged me rather, and she typed, "I'm drooling," and then she had a picture of these little drumstick chocolate cones, and so that was her last Facebook post to me. So it kind of, tells the story that she's not feeling well, she hadn't been sleeping. So I guess I'll get into more of that night, the 4th. I got home from work. We did our normal stuff, and she came out to the living room, and was crying and said that she, just was in so much pain. And so she laid on my lap and I rubbed her back and said it would be okay. And then she got some water and went to bed after a bit, or to her room because she stayed there, And I guess I fell asleep on the couch, and then I got up and I was taking my rings off, but they were swelled. And I got one off, but I couldn't get the other one. So I went into the bedroom or to the bathroom and put some soap on my hand. And I realized, like, oh, shoot, I dropped my other ring. Well, at this point, we had a 6-month-old puppy that she had to have, Greg was like, let the girl get a dog for God's sakes, And I'm like, oh, I know I'm going to take care of it, Little shit, I hate him. But anyways.
Don't listen, my kids. They love him so much.
You can have him.
No, thank you.
But yes, he's a handful. But anyways, so I went back into the living room and I got my phone on, with the flashlight, and I'm looking on the floor, and she comes out of her room and she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I lost my ring. And she's like, yeah, you need to find it before Ozzy eats it. And I'm like, yeah, because, I don't want to have to go looking for it after that, And so she got her water and I found my ring, and she went to her room. I went to my room, and I don't know if I said goodnight. I don't know if I said I loved you, I don't remember. I went to bed. Got up that next morning, and her door was closed, which it's no big deal because it always was closed. And I was like, well, it sounds quiet in there. I didn't open the door. I'm like, she's finally sleeping. So I went to work just like any other day. And I noticed, I'm like, oh gosh, she's not texting me at all. I guess she's really sleeping. And I get home, and when you're on Hammett, there's one section of Hammett you can look down and you can see my driveway, my garage. And the garage door's shut. And I'm like, that's weird. Usually it's up because she's going to get bench food. And came down the hill, and I remember thinking, because garage door shut, she must really be out of, Mm-hmm. So I went inside, and right away I'm like, oh, I got to cook this hamburger. I got to cook it. It's going to go bad. So I made dinner right away. I never do that. I usually sit on the couch and chill.
So you sensed something, perhaps?
I think I did. And I just didn't want to face it. And so I made dinner, and I remember thinking, well, she's not even coming out to try what's for dinner, And I cleaned up, and I sat on the couch, and a little time went by, and I'm like, well, she's not even come out to go to the bathroom or get ice water or anything. So I decided to go check on her. And I opened the door, and I knew right away she was gone. And I went to the bed, and I just rubbed my hands down her legs. They were so hard and so cold. And I was just like, no. So I got up, and I went running out to the living room, and Greg was asleep on the couch. And I'm shaking him. I'm like, Greg, get up. Kate's dead. And he wouldn't wake up. And so finally he kind of got up, and he sat up, and he's like, what? And I'm like, Kate's dead. Call 911. And so he laid back down, and I'm like, Greg, she's dead. And so finally I think it hit him, and he went running down to the bedroom. And so I called, and I didn't want her to touch, or him to touch her. I just didn't want her to move. And I told her, I'm telling the gals on the phone, about, she's a diabetic and has been having issues with blood pressure and all that. And so they're like, well, can you revive her? And I'm like, no, it's too late. She already had lividity. And so I sat there until the cops showed up.
And they came in and I'm telling them. And then the next thing I know, they're telling me I need to get out of my house, that it's a crime scene. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, we found fentanyl. I'm like, what? I said, she doesn't do drugs. And they're like, well, I don't know, but we found it. So I'm like, can I just stay here and sit with her?
It's not fair.
And they wouldn't. And it was so cold. We had to go sit in the garage. And I remember calling my sister. She lives over off of Highway C, and I'm just screaming. And she's like, Michelle, she said, I can't understand you. And I'm like, Kate is dead. And so she called her son, Tyler, and he came over. And then I don't know who called Greg's mom, but my sister called my brother, who went and got my mom so they could tell her in person. And they came up. Greg's mom didn't come. She doesn't drive at night. And but my nieces and my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, they all showed up. And we just sat there for hours. I think it was about 4 hours before they left the scene. And Greg called Cody. And it was so hard. He lives down in the city, so we had to wait for him, but he has dogs, and so he had to find somebody to watch the dogs.
Did you tell him on the phone, or did you wait for him to get there?
We told him. Greg told him on the phone. So the coroner is there, and they're wanting to take her. And I'm like, we can't leave. She can't go yet. Cody's not here. So Cody shows up. And he's like, Mom, I gotta see her. And so they unzipped the body bag. And he just lost it. And it was so hard as a mama to sit there and watch your son, and there's nothing you can do. I mean, you can't even wrap your head around that your daughter is gone. Like I said earlier, I knew she would die, but I figured I had 5 years or 10 before her kidneys or something gave her issues. And so the coroner wheeled her out, and I watched her put her in the vehicle. And they left, and they took her. And that was the last I saw her until the funeral home. And while we're waiting, the cops, of course, they had the drug task force out there because, they,
You're criminals, of course.
Yes, we're criminals. And I was explaining her situation and being in the hospital 23 times. And the one guy officer says, well, she must be an addict if she'd been in there that many times. And I'm like, dude,
oh my gosh.
They didn't let her leave with drugs because it affected her gastroparesis. And so they confiscated her phone so they could do their little, search. And I think they had it for a couple weeks, maybe a month. I don't remember. And it was just so unreal, You literally, you feel like you're living above your body, It's just...
How did you process so they take her away? How did you and your husband and your son process it that day? Like, do you remember? Like, did you guys console each other and hug each other? Like,
no.
What did you do?
I just stood there. I mean, I was just in shock. I couldn't believe it. Cody, he hugged me. But Craig was still, that standoffish, I don't show emotion, And it was just, I know once they left, we all went inside and we just kind of sat there, And I don't remember, I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. And right away, I got obsessive. I started and I still do it. I started going through her phone, looking at and downloading all her pictures and looking through her Facebook and looking through her Instagram and, just trying to get whatever I could. Yeah. And I still, every night, I go through that day's Facebook post, because
every night, 5 years later?
5 years later, because that's all I have left. And it's just, I don't ever say it's not fair, but because why me? What's so special? Why not me? But it's just, it was the most devastating thing in my life. I've lost my mom and my dad and my grandparents, and nothing has compared to this.
I remember talking to you like after your mom, and I messaged you, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Because how long after Kate died did your mom die?
2 years.
Yeah. And I remember messaging you, and you're like, I'm okay. Like, it just, which I can't, it's like, that's the natural way of life, is losing your mom first. Mm-hmm. And so going through, like, losing your baby, right. That just...
Even if you could in some way think that you expect it, there's no way you could ever prepare yourself or ever on this side of heaven be okay with it. You can't.
I'm not, but there's nothing I can do, so.
And she was saying before when you're picking up time and we were off the mics, she was never once been angry with God, which is incredible.
Say that again.
She's never once been angry with God.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had every right to, but.
Right.
Did you feel a peace for her finally? To be free from all of that? I can't imagine living 1 year with what she's had to deal with for
13. I felt at ease in a sense, I was in a fog for a good week where, I just went through the motions. But I knew she would be happier. She would be accepting of herself,
Yeah. Her body was made whole.
Yes. And she'd be perfect.
Should I pause to like blow my nose? Oh my God. Maybe we should just leave it in there.
Yeah.
The mamas are snotting. Okay, so walk us through that week, after she had passed, or the days and weeks.
Well, that night, there was no sleeping. Again, you just kind of walked in a fog. Throughout the week, there were people at the house, I remember laying on the couch in a fetal position. I wasn't eating. I wasn't drinking. My sister and one of my friends from work, were taking care of everything, trying to encourage me to eat, but, you just had no desire. But it was, we had called the funeral home, and everybody was there with me, my side, Craig's side. You never knew you would have to bury your child. And I'm like, they're asking me, do you want to bury her? Do you want to cremate her? And I'm like, I don't know. We didn't discuss it. I don't know what she would have wanted.
I was just going to say that I had found out, which, it's going to be great. I remember being so heartbroken because I remember the cops were there and they were like, don't be nosy, but you have that whole thing like, what is going on? It looks, yeah, exactly. Like, you're like, is everyone okay? And we were thinking like Greg was hurt or something along those lines. I don't know.
You never thought it was her daughter.
And then I remember when we were going to the funeral home and Ozzy got out and you had posted, my dog's out, can someone get him? My daughter died, headed to the funeral home, and I was just like, oh my gosh. It was like one of those moments, like when Nancy Davis had posted on the Facebook, and you could just tell, like, everything. It was just raw, and I was just like, started bawling. I'm like, oh my gosh. And like, everyone, of course, was trying to get but my heart just like broke for you. Yeah. And you're just,
So we were headed to the funeral home to make arrangements, and I was driving
I didn't want Greg seeing that I was crying, so I was kind of doing one of these, and I'm thinking, God, I kind of touched on this earlier. Please let me know that she's okay.
Yeah.
And that she's with you. Mm-hmm. And the next song that came on the radio was Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. And that was her favorite song. And in her journals, she had written that she wanted that played at her funeral. And I've got it tattooed on me. So we had Kate's funeral on that Friday. I say funeral, it was just a memorial. We had a lot of people show up. I was really surprised since she really...
That was a blessing.
Yeah. It went so long that the book where you signed didn't have any pages left, and we ran out of cards, and they had to shut it down and turn people away, So that, made my mama's heart feel good. But it was still, the hardest thing. Cody, he stayed out in the lobby. He couldn't, he came in at the very beginning before everybody and broke down. He couldn't stay. Greg, for the most part, stayed with me. But I was the one that was there the entire time. It was a long night. I think I did say we did end up cremating her. And so I have her sitting on my bed next to me because I don't do cemeteries, and so I couldn't.
So ever since then, or
even before then,
okay.
And so I was having a hard time with her being in the ground, and my mom's strict Catholic, and so I'm like, Mom, I just can't do it, I've got to have her, and Mom, of course, well, Catholics now believe that it's okay to be cremated.
I didn't know that was a thing.
And I was like, well, I'm glad Mom approves because I was going to do it anyways. But I was just kind of giving her my feel on it, But
me taking your opinion in.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of turn it a little bit in a direction with the fentanyl. I've really not told a lot of people about that because there is a stigma, It's like if your child overdoses or commits suicide, the reaction of the person you're telling is like, oh, well, it's not as important,
Yeah, which is so sad because no matter how a mom loses their child, do you think the grief, if anything, it might make the grief harder? Because it could have been prevented. Sure. Like a car accident is out of your control.
Right.
A suicide is something that I'm sure a mom that has experienced that, or even drugs, is like, this was so preventable. Yeah. So if anything, for me, I think it would make it even harder, let alone like that. Yeah, that really upsets me.
Initially, I thought Kate might have committed suicide. But as I was kind of thinking about it, her relationship and ours was really close, and she liked to write, and she wrote notes and letters all the time. And I'm like, if she did this on purpose, she would have left me a note,
Mama knows.
Right. And then my niece, God love her, she's my little techie. She found in Kate's phone a couple different things. One, where at like 1:00 in the morning, Kate ordered $300 of clothes on my account.
There's your answer.
Yeah, so if you're going to commit suicide.
Right, you wouldn't be buying stuff for the future.
Right. And then we also found under her notes that she had started that night, the 4th, at like 9:30, a Christmas list of things she wanted to buy for us and things that she wanted for her. And so I'm like, this wasn't intentional,
right.
Whether, she did, if it had been fine, but.
Not being in denial about it, but
right.
It's just not adding up.
But looking backwards, on the 3rd, when I had read earlier that, she had such a pounding headache, and as she moved, I'm like, that was the fentanyl. Prior to that, the first, when she was talking about throwing up and being sick, that was just her normal DKA, diabetic issues, eating disorder issues. But what I found out is that she knew a guy don't really know how they met, but doesn't matter. But he was homeless. She had talked to me maybe 2 or 3 times about him before. Once she had said, "Oh, Mom, he's over in Illinois and he's homeless and, doing fentanyl and blah, blah, blah." And so she reached out to him, and it was on November 1st. And if you recall, the day before or two, she made the appointment for the pain management, and they couldn't get her into November 25th. And I verified this through him. I talked to Grant, and then I also went through her phone, between their conversations. And she wanted 25 pills, November 1st to November 25th. She says to Grant that she wasn't doing this to get high. She just was in so much pain. She just wanted relief. She knew she was so thin that, it could kill her, and questioned if she should get Narcan. She didn't even know that if she needed Narcan, she couldn't give it to herself,
Yeah.
And, that day when she said she was so sick, I wish she would have said something to me, because I would have called that doctor. I would have said, she is into shit.
Like, this is an emergency.
We got to get her in before, And
she became very desperate.
yes.
Like, that's how much
Because she was hurting.
suffering.
And she says, I will treat it like a regular pill. I'll take, I'll take it in thirds, morning, afternoon, and evening.
Well, and she recognizes that is a drug used in medicine
Yeah,
for pain
it
management,
is.
right?
That is where it
Right.
came from.
Right. And so, but it makes me angry that she didn't tell me. But I know why she didn't tell me, because she knew I would have acted and I would have stopped it. But she was also gullible enough to think that I've never done this before. I'll be okay. Look at all the times I've been in DKA and didn't die. This isn't going to kill me,
Right.
And she made it 4 days. She went to bed somewhere on the 4th. I know actually it would have been into the 5th, because at 1:00 we know she purchased the clothing, and she took her 3rd and never woke up. From the coroner, I talked to him, because I work in law enforcement, and he's at the scene when he was there. He's like, well, the fentanyl nowadays is being laced with a horse tranquilizer, which I can't remember, ketamine maybe. And he said, we've been having a lot of deaths, and so when the blood work finally came back to her, I don't know why, I had to know,
Yeah.
And so I met with him, and he's like, Michelle, he said, he goes, it's a fluke, I think. He said, there's nothing in her body, no marijuana, no other drugs. And so it's like, he said, I feel, he says that, well, there was one thing in her system that was high, and that was Benadryl. And I told you guys earlier where she couldn't sleep, and so she was supplementing her sleep medicines with the Benadryl to sleep. And I had told her like 2 weeks prior, I'm like, Kate, you need to knock it off. I said, you're going to end up killing yourself, and she just blew me off. And, she's invincible,
So he had said, though, hadn't he had the Benadryl not been in her system or vice versa?
Yes.
She would not have died.
He felt that she probably would have been
He
okay.
said off the books.
He said there was so little fentanyl in her system, and whatever the other drug was, that either doing one or the other, she probably would have. But the combined of everything just shut her respiratory system down, and that she just stopped breathing. He said she wouldn't have been in pain, that she would have just kind of gone to sleep. She would have just slowly, he said probably took about 20, 25 minutes before she was gone. Which, does it make you feel any better? No, she's still gone,
Maybe having that peace of mind, knowing at least her last little bit of time she was at peace.
Like she wasn't like trying to.
She wasn't hurting or like,
yeah,
up. Yeah.
Yeah. But I still wish that, I mean, I'm her mama, you know, why didn't I know? Why didn't I get the mommy's, you know, spidey senses, you know, and I could have gone and given her the Narcan, but she didn't have any, but, you know, but I could have called the cops, you know, got somebody there,
you know, just to be with your daughter on their last breath.
Right.
Would that have
you know,
sufficed?
and I carried a lot of guilt.
Okay, so what would you say to the mom going through all this, or what do you feel, you know, now that you can look back at the situation? Is there things that helped you get through it? What did you cling to? Is there anything, like, if someone's listening and going through this, what that you could advise on?
Well, I kind of talked about the diabetes and the eating disorder and finding help and all that already, so I really won't get into that. But as far as, you know, the grief portion of it, you got to give yourself grace. Everybody grieves differently. I needed hugs. I needed that comfort. My husband needed distance. You had to, you know, give each other what they want, and that's hard. A lot of marriages break up because of that. And I had to come to the realization that, you know, this is not my husband. My son and I grieved a lot. We called each other and we'd bawl, you know, anxiety, you know, every month, the 5th of the month, anxiety out the roof, you know. About a year later, that kind of subsided, you know, so I got lucky there. But I think in hindsight, and reading my journal, I, you know, saw notes too after the fact, you know, it was God. You know, there was so much that I haven't said going on in our lives. And I don't think I would have made it had it not been for God. I think he carried me through all those times. Yeah, I wrote in my Bible, I'm mom. I need to be able to fix this. You know, I can't fix this, you know, only God, you know, and believe me, I'm trying, you know, but I'm not as, you know, I don't have those, you know, that walk yet, you know, and I realized that that's what I needed, you know, and that was the biggest thing that got me through.
What did that look like? Did you read your Bible more? Did you just pray more? Did you talk to God, or did you just sit and feel his presence? What did that actually like feel?
For me, it was music. I still, like I said, with my walk, I still have a hard time praying. I am easily distracted, and so music speaks to me. I think I played Oceans Where Feet May Fail. I think is the call. I think I played that 1,000 times, you know, in that year. It just so constantly, I Surrender. What was the other one we played? Revelation Song. Have you ever heard that one? That's a really good one. I don't remember. There was one other one. We played it at her funeral.
You always felt a closeness with God.
Yeah, and that's where I tend to find that. I'm working on the other. But that God was it, you know. I know somebody might say, well, I don't have that relationship with God. And I would offer that to you, you know. Open that Bible. Find a friend that has that relationship, you know, that can be there for you and help you see that, you know, while this is going on with your child, that it's out of your control, but it's Satan's world, you know. It's not God causing this, you know. It's Satan. He wants you to think it's God, you know, because he wants that divide.
And here you are saying you're not going to have any profound God moments to share. Like, come on, girl, preach.
Well, I'm no Jane Patton. So got a long way to go there. But
no, it's so good, because I think too that which obviously I've never walked through this, and I pray that I don't ever have to experience that, but it reminds me of, like, we're supposed to have the mentality of, like, we're just like foreigners on this earth, like passing through, temporary, like, hey, we're trying to go home. And it's almost like I always think of the movie where you have, like, the person that is in a different foreign country and they have their backpack and they're like asking for directions and there's a language barrier and man, they just miss home so much. And that is really what our life is supposed to be like here on earth. And sometimes it's hard to see that or remember that when you have kids and a husband and, you know, we get attached and it's like, no, we're not supposed to get attached to things of this world. We're on a mission to go home to God. It's like, I don't know. I think of Paul when he was talking, is it Romans when he says like, whether I die or live, like life's so bad here. I want to go home, but I also could keep going and preach about the gospel. And so like, I don't know, that's hard for me to have that mindset. But I can imagine when we lose someone very close to us, our hearts probably long more. Like you probably have more of that.
Closer
yes,
to
like
heaven than even
yes.
Christians that are devout in the Word and can rattle off scriptures because you have
you have a
your parents
longing
might
to
have
go.
passed on, but you have that child in there.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that making heaven so much more real and so much more
desirable.
I am not afraid of death.
Yes.
I mean, almost immediately, you know. I could stay here, and right now I need to be here for Cody.
Right.
Because right now he's not believing, you know. So I got to be that praying mama and put it in God's hand, you know, that he'll change his heart, you know. But if I died today, I would be okay with it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have that fear, you know.
And you wouldn't have thought that otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
like you
And
can
We,
only
like,
get that
craved,
from a
like,
sense.
we have to be here. Oh no, like you know, we really do fear death, which is a really sad thing. You know, if we truly understand the truth and
Right.
our hope.
It's like Sam said, this is not our home. You know, we got to look up, you know. Another thing I would say that might help somebody in the beginning stages of their grief, you know, that first month, maybe longer, it just depends. It's so raw, you know, but that does go away. That rawness will ease because life comes in. You know, if you need to take it 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, do what you have to do to help you. Take care of yourself.
And it's okay when you have those hard days when the waves are really crashing.
Yes.
Like don't push against it, right?
Right.
Just let it happen.
Let it hit you, experience it, and then start over tomorrow.
I heard this beautiful saying. It was actually from a mother that had lost a child, and she said, the whole of grief never gets smaller. A lot of people think like, oh, it will shrink, it'll go away. It's just when it first happens, the whole is your whole life. And then slowly but surely your world around it. So if grief is a black spot and the white matter around it is your life, slowly but surely your life starts to grow a little bit. But that whole stays this, like you can probably go into it some days and it's just as raw and hard as it was that first day.
And there are lots of mothers. You know, I'm in Jenny John Lee's grief group, and there are mothers that can't get out of bed years later, you know. And thank God the group that I'm with, we are functional, you know, whether it's choosing God, choosing the one day at a time, you know. It's so easy to lose yourself. I think that you just have to take that, you know, one day at a time stance. You know, don't think of the future. You know, that's too far away. You know, there's a lot that can happen.
Did you want to be the mom that stayed in bed and didn't get out?
No.
Or you didn't?
No. I always took the stance that Kate would not want me to be unhappy.
That's good.
She would want me to live and to be happy. Which isn't always, especially that for me, it was the first year. You know, everything's a first. First holidays, you know, first birthdays, you know, whether it's mine or hers or, you know, Cody's, you know, everything's a first. And, you know, it was very hard. We're coming up on 5 years. I'm starting to see myself, you know, wobble a little bit, but I'm cognizant of it. So I will face it and move on. since I do have ashes, I take her with me when we go on trips. And
I love
I've
that. Yeah.
put her in the ocean. I've put her, we took the ferry across, to go to Grafton because she loved doing that. So I put her in the, the river. She's been a few places.
Aw.
There's
Do you
probably
do
even
a tradition of any sort each year, like on her birthday or on Christmas we do this?
Well, I started like at Christmas wearing like crazy little headbands, just kind of in her honor. Her first year that she was gone, we did a lantern release. The second year, we met at the park in Wentzville because I have a brick up there. Actually, I got one in Troy up there at, I think, Wynad Park. But we did a balloon release, and that was really neat. There was a dove that, as I was speaking, was flying around us, it was kind of cool.
Okay, God.
Yeah, another God wink. But since then, I've not done anything. I feel guilt sometimes, should I be?
Someone had posted, was it not you that posted? We lit candles for her.
That was probably part of the first year when if you couldn't be there to do the lantern to light a candle, I might do that. I think I do that.
The lanterns. I think you do like here. I think there was I don't know, because I remember we did the lanterns and then we've lit candles for Kate and like.
Well, I think I may have posted, that
okay.
light a candle and think of my baby, because that is one thing a parent is afraid of is that their child's going to be forgotten, and so I've already had some issues with there, and we don't have time for that. But it's like
a quick hit on that because that is a big thing. I've heard that in the last 2 years, like 2 or 3 times from parents that have lost children. What are like 1 or 2 or 3 ways that you people could do? So could they send you a text on her birthday? Could they show up and leave you something? Can they call you when they're with you? Is it okay that they bring her up?
Yeah.
Yes, I would say probably 99% of us parents would want you to talk about their child. Don't treat it like, we can't go there. You're not going to hurt our feelings. You hurt our feelings more by not talking about them.
That's something that I learned, in just doing these podcasts. Like, I was always like the person that's like, oh, I don't want to say it and I'm like, well, duh, it makes sense now just saying it out loud. Like, they're thinking about it, but it's usually the person's not trying to be rude. They're like thinking about it the whole time too.
Well, they're afraid they're going to hurt your feelings,
or like
but for me,
you
hurt. Yes, let me cry. That's okay. But even at the
hard stuff and the good stuff. So, what are your favorite memories, or something like, hey, on her birthday, what's the hardest thing? It's okay to ask any of those questions, or is it more like the positive stuff to bring up?
Anything, just memories of her that they have, or
and if somebody would send you a gift on her birthday to acknowledge her, anything like that too. Are you saying that would be very helpful? Just anything?
Yeah. Well, I think initially that's where I missed it most. Because Sam had asked the neighbors for food, like a food train, but. After that first week, everything dies. Everybody goes on with their life, and your life has just been blown up, Right. So still being there,
so checking in the month, probably the first year, continually checking in would be a good
just
piece of
calling
advice.
people, and I have met so many people that I knew that had lost a child, and I didn't do that. And I've actually gone back to people and apologized and said, I am so sorry. It took me losing my child to realize that I was those other people. I wasn't there for people, and because you don't know, I had friends that I thought would be there
It hurts.
that,
You have to forgive them, don't you?
because they don't know, but then I had total strangers,
Yeah.
I had a neighbor behind me. We just barely talked.
Deborah?
No.
Lindsay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gavin and
Yeah.
Emerson's mom? Okay.
She had a blanket made with a whole bunch of Kate's pictures. I think we may have talked twice, stuff like that, friends that hadn't talked to me in a while, showing up at the house, where one of my best friends never came to the house.
So showing up even when you're saying no sometimes. If you're close enough, or even, that's what I guess somebody's recently told. It was a podcast, a single mom podcast. She went through a really, really hard thing. She's like, somebody would have just shown up on my doorstep.
A little help is helpful.
Yes, right. That's the funny part of our
Yes.
podcast, but that's true.
Right. And especially in that newness, in the rawness, somebody to just cry with,
Yeah.
you know, it's not fair. It's, you know,
Yeah.
whatever you're going through or feeling, you know, that you can just talk it out, you know.
Did you have anyone show up to like clean your house or do laundry? Would that have been helpful?
Food, you know, I think with,
More.
you know, you're just forgotten, you know, and
This is exactly why you're here. I mean, this is multifaceted, but this is a great example of what we're trying to spread awareness on.
yeah, I heard Jenny had talked at, what's the ministry we're doing now? Cultivate. And, I heard of how, she talked about how she had friends there that, helped her, and I was like, I wish I would have had that, know.
Well,
more,
and now, like, too, like back then, I think, I don't know, this is helping me to be just like more bold. And like back then I was so much more like of a timid person in that. And like now I'm just like, okay, if that happens in someone's life close to me, I'm just gonna like show up with the but like I don't care.
Here's
something. Well, I don't want to offend. Like before, you would think like, well, I don't want to offend her. What if she doesn't need that? And is she gonna be mad? Like, or you go as a person who sometimes. And now I'm just like, you just gotta show up.
I would say they're not going to be mad for showing up and for doing anything.
Yeah.
What I would say is to be careful of what you say.
Yeah.
Because people tend to want to help and they think they're helping, but they say some really hurtful things.
Say a couple of those, and then also what is safe to say. Like, Michelle, I know you're not okay. Do you want to hug? Do you want to talk about it? Like
That would have been perfect.
Versus,
well, at least you still have Cody.
oh gosh,
Okay, yeah, I do, but I'm missing my other
whole
half,
nother one.
I mean, would you be okay if one of your children is gone?
Right.
And you still have. Yes, I am thankful. He has been a rock for me, but he doesn't replace.
and that came probably with good intentions.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
And that's
they
where
hadn't walked through it.
the grace has to be.
Yeah.
The other one that really kills me is I understand. I lost a pet. I lost my dog.
Oh gosh.
I'm sorry.
No.
I don't care how much you love your pet.
No.
You did not carry your dog in your belly for 9 months and raise that child.
Yeah,
Even if you lost that child in vitro,
Right.
you didn't do that with that dog.
Right.
Right.
And that just, even now, I mean, I'll say I'm sorry for your loss when people post their dogs died, but I want to follow it up with, at least you haven't lost your freaking child. To me, that is just, it's wrong. And I know some dog people out there are going to be hating on me.
I mean,
I could see
could
somebody being sad about losing their dog and just do a generic post, but if there's any type of comparison, that's not okay.
No, I think
you can grieve. There's perspective. People would be like,
Right.
"Oh, my daughter
No.
had an ear infection." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Nikki. I forgot your daughter's going through cancer." And I was like, "Girl, it's fine." But if they would have tried to compare it, like
to
I
an
get it.
animal.
Right.
No.
Everybody has something in their life they're going through,
Right.
and you can relate to that.
I am the most like, my dog was I always joked that was my fourth baby, but like, no way, not even. Like, I loved her so much.
was a
Like,
great
probably
companion.
ridiculous for dog owners, but like, no way on earth does it even. I will lose 500. I will lose all the dogs on the earth to save one mother from,
Right.
no, stop.
And maybe toward a
Even
good.
people that are parents, like, I can't comprehend what you've gone through.
Yeah,
I
I hope you never have to go through it,
Right.
And it just, I do find myself being thankful. I mean, sure, I miss her, and there are days where I can't hardly get up out of bed because it hits me so hard. You never know, most of the time, most days are good. You just don't know what's going to set you off. But I don't want anybody to have to go through it. It has been the worst experience of my life. I have grown through it, though. I feel like
I am helping others,
Yeah,
when
so
I,
is there some beauty that you've seen come out of it, like you being more empathetic towards people?
yes, I
growing?
mean, if I know someone that has, child has died, I will call them and I continually check
Yeah.
on them. I had a friend of mine, Chris, she was, I don't know how far into her grief, but she was at the grocery store and just lost it. And I just called her. I didn't know. And she's like, she'll still tell me that, I was her assignment, as Jenny said,
yeah.
So not on purpose, but I just know now that people need that,
And you're
Another,
an example too of like not the saying in bed, like, hey, come on,
Yeah.
you still have time on this earth. God has you here.
Yes.
And you gotta
Do-
keep.
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
And another thing I do is actually I stole the idea from my niece. She had bought me a Morse code bracelet with Kate's name on it, and I wore it for 2 years before it fell off, and because it unraveled. But now I give one to every mother as it comes up on their anniversary date. So I've still got a few people I have to hit, but I think I've
beautiful.
done
That is beautiful.
close to 40 of them now. So yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
and that's not bragging. That's just
No, yeah,
that's just
It
because
takes one to know
Yeah.
one, and you know how much that means to them.
Yeah.
because I send a little note that just letting you know that I'm thinking of you and
And it's like
your
almost
child,
like
and I say their name,
Yeah.
today,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a sisterhood, isn't it?
a little
you
bit.
Guys, I'm
Yeah,
sure,
it's
I
a
assume
group you never wanted to
bond-
be in.
Right, like,
had no
yeah.
choice.
It's like
you
But
know.
I'm sure,
Curse.
I'm assuming maybe there's a unique bond between
Yeah.
some of the other, parents that have lost children have.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but all I can say is, do the best you can.
Yeah.
Grieve the way you want to grieve.
Mm-hmm.
Don't somebody come up, you've been grieving too long. Get over it. Move on.
Oh my gosh.
You don't ever get over it. You don't ever move on.
Yeah.
You move forward.
Mm-hmm.
You do the best you can. There are some people that do more than others. Sometimes I have guilt about that. Like Jenny has that great Breeze gift that she's raised so much money, and has helped over 20 families adopt. Then we have Katie, who has Blessings for Barrett. She fundraises and then buys children's books about grief and gives them to siblings, So sometimes I do feel like, maybe I should be doing something,
You need to no. They need those things, and then they need the mom to send out the Morse code bracelets
was
too.
thinking the
Like
same thing.
no, like
They
it's
need, like, the
all
behind
of
the
it.
scene,
Yeah,
like that mentor.
yeah,
That
right. So don't ever underestimate. Like that could have been. You don't know like the impact. Like one bracelet could have been the thing that the mom got and was like, "Wow, I was about to give up today, but this was a little God wink," or it's all. I don't know. When you're doing stuff for God, He doesn't look at it as like this is greater than this, even though to us it might look like that. I think it's all just as impactful.
Have you ever felt a calling to something? Or is it more interwoven in what you're talking about? Have you ever felt anything deep down? If you had time,
Well, right now I'm tired, There's, like I said, there's been so much going on in 13 years. I don't know if I have it in me to do the fundraising, to be able to have a nonprofit. I would love to be able to help girls or boys, whoever, be able to get into eating disorder facilities.
the whole time you're talking at the beginning, that's where my mind kept going because it seemed like from the beginning you wanted to advocate for it.
Right.
The Dr. Phil and all of that. Like that almost seemed like your fight kind of thing. That was the sense that I got.
But right now I'm just tired,
And it's not time.
Yeah.
And you've had
So-
to work through all of this. You didn't have a break, right? Wouldn't it have been nice to take a year or two off? And
Oh, I went to work that Monday because I couldn't be home, because it was like, she's not here, and I went probably 3 months without opening her door because I could pretend she's in there watching TV or she's at the hospital. And one day I'm like, Michelle, you can't do this. You gotta face it, and so
what did you do with it?
I opened her door.
Oh, is it still the same way it was?
Yeah, and that's another thing I kind of forgot about is, don't be in any rush to get rid of their things.
Yeah.
You're so emotional, and what you think today may not be what you think
Yeah.
a year from now, you know? So her room's the same. However, if you recall me saying she has a spending issue, she had 2 closets and 2 dressers filled with clothes. A lot of them without tag or with tags, stuff without, but she maybe worn once, you know. And then I'm like, this is not doing me any good, you know. So what I did is I had my nieces come over, and then a friend of Kate's. They weren't really hanging out at the end. That last year, you know, she didn't do, but it was her last friend basically before. Come over, and I picked out the stuff that had sentimental value for me and kept it, and then let them go through and pick out whatever they wanted, you know. And then I have taken a few of the things that had meaning and had a quilt made, you know. But one of my God winks, I say it's a God wink, I don't know. But, you know, people say they feel their child, and I can't say that I honestly do. I wish I did, you know. But I smell her. At least I tell myself it's only her room. When I walk by, it's not every day, but I get a whiff of something, and it's not perfume. You know, it's just a very distinct smell, not smelly like, oh my God, you know, gym shoe smell or anything, you know.
Like,
and it's like, and so when I smell it, I'm like, hey, Kate, you know, love you, you know, and just kind of acknowledge that, you know, and I try not to. For me, it's still, I can't dwell on her, you know, and think of all those memories, because I just can't, you know. I'll see her picture, you know, there for a while. There was a picture that was hanging, and I kissed it every morning, you know. I've weaned my way off of that. I still sleep with her baby blanket, you know, because she still carried it all the time she's in the hospital. She'd take it with her, you know.
And she got a little piece of it cremated with her. I love that.
Yeah. So, you know, so handle your grief the way you need to. And don't let anybody tell you, get over it, move on. You know, you should be over this by now, you know.
It's like Job's friends. Just sit there with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Don't think you know.
Right. So
Okay.
Beautiful.
Well, I
You were
think
so
that you
brave.
had a lot of I'm gonna cry just ending it. I think you did so good.
well,
And I think that your strength I think that this will help a lot of women and a lot of listeners listeners that know someone going through it to just show up in a better way and to have an understanding. And maybe too, my hope and prayer is like we take some stigmas off of all that, because you just never know how someone, or what's the backstory or whatever,
why they're doing what they're doing.
Exactly. If they died from like drugs or suicide or
Don't be
whatever
judgmental,
the case.
you know.
That's
Just
still
be there
life.
for that person. Yes,
Yeah.
they
We're all
lost their
broken,
child.
Right? We all
Right.
sin.
Right.
We're all-
Yeah, we're all a
And
mess.
what
It
I,
could be
would-
any
you
of
know,
us.
anybody could text me or call me or email me,
I
you
love
know.
that.
yes.
So anyone struggling with grief or the diabetes or the eating disorder. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I would recommend too, even though it's at the church, it's not a church group per se, but it's called In the Waiting, and it is mothers who have lost
I was gonna
children.
ask that.
whether
You
it's
think that's helpful?
In Lincoln County.
at North Roads
North
Church.
Road Church.
Yes, every Thursday, the first Thursday of the month at 6:00.
We need to start plugging those into our thing.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you know
that's
It's
it
different than Destiny's
because
group. That's a whole
That's a
different
widow
thing.
one.
Oh, duh.
'Cause you'll-
she had both.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll end up seeing that, like, we have new people coming in. We've got the people that have been there for a while now, and you know, you can see, okay, they're laughing. You know, maybe I can get there.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
I can imagine
and
how
and you,
feeling
you're not
goes
going to be
in the
judged
way.
by anything, whether you know how your child died, what your issues were. You know, you talk about them. You know, and you have friends there to help out.
I love that.
But yeah.
So good.
Well, you're connected with Samantha and me now too with our group, and if there is ever a mother that loses a child, like if there's meal, you know, we are. This is why we have the community. It's for bringing adult women together for support, just like you said. If we go through hard things and we have support, it helps us. And then we want to encourage people to show up. So we have a whole community that would do food drives and different things. So if you get connected to a new person that's suffering through it, or for whatever reason, somebody that you know could be helped by that,
Right.
please connect with us.
I can do that.
Yeah.
So, and I want to plug Rachel from my group too. She lost her little Alina, and she does every year for her. She does a food drive, and in her daughter's name.
I love that. I love that.
Please connect. Samantha takes care of all those things, so we
Yeah,
love.
if there's events for any of this, or we can plug in and we can make an event in the Aligned Mommas community page. And then
October 5th is Bree's gift at
Yeah.
North Roads.
Yep. Actually, I have that on my list. So I haven't put it in there
post.
yet.
But
So-
I
don't
need to get it
hesitate
on
though.
there.
Like when we say, like, we believe God has created this community to connect. We're supposed to connect and bring people together and post to other people, like collaborate.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on your group. I don't participate as much. I mean, I see what you guys do, but one, I'm usually working, but sometimes I feel like, well, my kids are young or are old, where your guys are young and it's more active, but I don't think it has to be.
We have wit. Yeah.
We need wisdom, and we need somebody to speak on the hardest topic, which is this. I mean,
And
this is what is going to really help people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of women on the group that aren't even moms, that are just there. So it's really
Tired.
is
Our
a
top podcast, she's in her 70s.
yeah.
No joke. So,
For real.
we
Linda.
we believe in the mentorship of even people 10 years older than us, the iron sharpening iron type of thing. So no, the group is meant to be, for whoever feels led to participate in whatever. But again, we would love to support you. And even if you start something of, hey, can we do this event? We'll come around you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
So,
I'll work on that.
Well, thank you.
Maybe when I retire.
yeah. Is that 5 years or?
7. Not soon enough.
Come on, do this.
Yeah. Bring on the lottery.
Yes.
So,
Well, thank you. I was so nervous to reach out and ask you, but I was like, I know
Wow.
she's gonna be
I'm so glad you
such a blessing.
Yeah.
I hope I can maybe help somebody.
No, your strength shines, and I've noticed that through this whole experience.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Love you.
So
Are you going to close with your normal close?
No,
Okay.
I was going to.
I know what it is.
I know.
Spaghetti.
Okay, I did message her.
No. Don't ask the question.
That's because I put it in. I was like, well, normally I close with this, but I was like, you're the first one I'm telling, but I feel like I don't want to throw you off guard and be like, what the heck?
Or, talk about such a sensitive topic.
I know that's what I said.
Well, to be honest, I don't cook anymore. Very, very seldom. I think that's
Just you and hubby in the house.
right.
Yeah.
But I think it deeply stems from the night Kate
Making the
died,
hamburger.
where I rushed in right away and trying to avoid facing reality. So I don't like to cook like I used to.
So
So
many angles this stuff
Yeah.
affects.
yeah, really messes you up sometimes, but you work through it.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.
Thank
so
you.
Yeah.
see you next time, mamas.